Husaberg 70-degree bent heads, supermoto fanatics, anybody out there with an addiction to these bikes. I'm hoping that this video will help you if you happen to have an ADLER ADIGE slipper clutch. That's what's behind that beautiful blue Husaberg anodized clutch cover. This girl here is my baby. Only had her since the spring. Only got her working in September. She's had a host of issues. Basically been sitting around not doing anything for too many years. And when a bike sits around, well, lots of things start to happen. So the bottom line is I have put barely 1,000 miles on her in the last couple of months, and I've had a series of problematic issues that have popped up. At this point, I have overcome pretty much all of them, but this particular video is going to focus on the clutch because it is the ADLER, and unlike the OEM, the ADLER is something that not a lot of people seem to know about. At least I can't find anything online. I get to the ADLER website, I get pretty frustrated. They just don't have a lot of good PDFs. Their manuals is not really a manual. Their videos do go through the disassembly and the assembly of the clutch so that when you get it, you can take the stack apart and it shows you how to put it together. That was actually pretty helpful. But what it mostly did was show me that my ADLER is very different from the one that they've got, at least the measurements of some of the plates, and we'll get into that in a moment. But just so you know, I've got all my tools over here, my torque wrench, my 8mm, my refreshments. It is the second day of the new year, so we are still very much in the holiday season, and it is around dinner time, so I need to have a refreshment. Now, back to the bike, just so that you know where I stand with this. I am not a hardcore, long-time Berg user. Like I said, this is actually my second one. I had an FS570. It was pretty much stock. So when I got this one with all the mods that it had, I was very excited. Some of the mods include a ported head. It's got a 45mm throttle body on there over the stock OEM 42mm. Obviously, it's got the Akrapovic pipe and that beautiful header right there. It's got a friction treatment or friction reducing treatment inside the motor. Motor only had about 900 miles on it. Like I said, I put maybe 900 on her since I've gotten her going, but she had all kinds of little issues. I'm talking little things. The first thing was that we just couldn't get her to stay, oh, she'd start, but she wouldn't rev up. There was a massively fuel, or lean fuel situation. So I invested in the Vortex ECU, thinking that would be able to overcome that. No luck there. Got her into a shop that was supposed to dyno her, and basically she sat there for a couple of months while everybody tried to figure out what was wrong. I spent, I don't know, 10, 20 hours online going through all the Husaberg.org pages, finding all the different issues that people had regarding fuel and how they solved it. And eventually the wire harness came into play. In my case, it was the fuel sensor harness, the boot. Underneath the boot, those wires had eroded so bad that they were grounding out, and I had to replace the fuel sensor because it was basically where it connected to the fuel sensor. So that ended up getting her fired up, and then I got her tuned in and started riding her at the end of September. Since that time, I've had miscellaneous problems. I had, for example, the notorious weep hole leakage that everyone talks about. I thought I'd do the seal job on her, but Instead, I waited a little bit, changed the coolant, which I knew hadn't been changed, and I also noticed if I shut the bike down and didn't let the temperature get too high when sitting in a light, that seemed to help quite a bit. I think the seals have actually reseated themselves. I've got one of those gauges here that tell me what the radiator temperatures are. I also have a vapor that was not connected properly. It really didn't have any functionality when I got her, but now she's all wired up and doing her job. So I've got a good handle on her temperature. Obviously I've got a fan. The point is that weep hole situation, I don't know if the seals receded or what, but they stopped leaking, and she's been great as we went into the fall and for the last 500-600 miles. So I'm good on that account. I had a lot of chain slap. I had a big old chain guard on this bike. That was crazy. It was over here, hard to see, but if you can look right there, you can see that there's barely any clearance between the chain and the tire, maybe 1/8 of an inch. And now she doesn't really hit the tire. I had a chain guard on there, this real fancy chain guard that was contributing to that chain chewing on the tire. Now, in all fairness, I would not have put these wheels on this bike. These are Fab. And yeah, the Fab wheels, I guess, are kind of special, but this is a 5.5 inch. I don't think I need this, but it's on there. She's staying there for now. And without the chain guard, I'm fine. I don't have any rub, so all good on that side. I had an issue with the master back here. This master would not hold pressure, could not get that line to work. So we ended up rebuilding it, and we got the Coromoto lines installed, and now the brake is working wonderfully. From Heiko in Germany, I was able to purchase a bunch of carbon. Got it all over her, man. I love it. It's absolutely beautiful. That was a good thing. As you can see, she's got other bling as well. And for the most part, the bling has been fine. But the last thing that I had to contend with, and this was a major issue for me because I was very confused about what was happening. I go out and ride for 50 or 100 miles, and I would see a big drop in my oil, and I have to add an ounce or two. And then the next time I go to ride, I would have a nice puff of blue smoke coming out of her, and that was very, very scary. There's no way that I was losing oil through the head. In other words, my rings, I'm 100% sure, are new and tight, and everything else should be good. So where was that oil coming from? Or I should say, where was it going here, and how was it getting out of the exhaust pipe? Well, one thing that I've always done on my bikes is essentially run an exhaust, or I should say a breather valve bypass from the airbox. So I'll always port the breather valve out of the airbox, so I'm not dumping anything back into the motor, or the throttle body, I should say, because there's a lot of contaminants that come from there. Well, on Bergs, it's even more important because the breather valve is right up in here, and when you go to 11 or 12 o'clock, that line is now going down into the back of the airbox, or the bottom of the airbox. So essentially, any oil that comes up through that breather valve line is going to end up in your airbox. So after every run, I was dumping a good ounce or two of oil in there, and then of course the next time I would start the bike up, that oil was getting into the combustion chamber, and I don't even want to think about all that crap that was going through there. It happened probably 3 or 4 times before I figured out that there's no way this motor is eating that much oil. I got inside or underneath the air filter, found what was going on, and ended up routing my port over here, or I should say breather valve line to a filter over here. And now I got nothing getting back inside that air box. And since that time, she is running so amazingly well and smooth and clean, except for one thing. The other day, this little ADLER clutch decides it's going to start behaving like a recluse clutch. Now I know that they're called a slipper clutch, but they're not supposed to slip when you're accelerating. You're supposed to slip when you're decelerating. It's supposed to help with you cornering and preventing, a little chatter back here on the rear wheel. And I have them on my other bikes. I have like an STM on that one, and I love it. The ADLER is pretty amazing, mostly because it just takes your clutch pull and makes it nothing. I mean, clutch pull on this thing is like, you can literally one pinky it. It's a joke. It's so easy, but, and this is a big but, it's got these adjustments in there that I didn't know anything about. And that's what we're gonna get into here. So let me get this cover off and let you see what we're looking at when we open this up, because I've got the ADIGE ADLER in here, and that's the one that's got the 3 springs, and it also has what's called shims. So we're going to learn how to properly place those shims and the impact that they have when they are improperly placed. All right, so we're looking at the ADLER ADIGE clutch right here. Unlike the one that they show in their video, as far as the installation is concerned, you're not going to be able to get this bottom hub or basket out of here unless you remove the entire side cover. On the Aprilia, you can actually install these very easily. Just that small side cover comes off and you can pop it off and on as needed. I'm sure there's some other bikes where that occurs as well, but on this one, she is tucked behind that lip. So you got to take this whole thing off if you need to. Fortunately, all I need to do is remove these 3 spring bolt and put the edit underneath there. What I'm going to do now is remove one of them and show you how I've got it configured, and I'm going to tell you how it was and what was happening, because it was crazy how it was set up. But at the end of the day, I think I got her going right. So let me get these off and show you. All right, so what you're looking at here is what I had originally when I first opened her up. I had the spring bolt up top, and at the base of the spring, I had one of these little shims. This would be one of the small shim. In the video that I saw on the ADLER site, they talk about 3 shims, one that can fit underneath here, and then the others which can fit underneath this spacer here at the top, right up here. But for some reason, the previous owner had installed the shim at the base of the spring. And I'm not sure what they were trying to accomplish, but I didn't know any better. So I had read, I think it was on the Supermoto Junkie forum, that if you add another washer at the base of the spring, you can get a little more tension out of them. I have done this in some of my older bikes, dirt bikes and whatnot over the years, and for a temporary fix while you're waiting on springs, that can sometimes help. So I added this crush washer down at the bottom, and when I went out to test, immediately discovered that it was slipping twice as bad. So that was a little confusing, but then I started to think about how the slipper clutch works, And that's when I found those videos on the ADLER site, which talked about the shims and how they were supposed to be used up here. So I then went ahead and installed the one shim that they provided, and I added a crush washer and inserted it this way. Loaded up all 3 springs that way, and voila, she is working crazy good. Remember I told you I haven't had an FE570, basically all OEM, so I was used to her, no mods that were significant motor-wise, and yet the torque on her allowed me to snap up that wheel. Like instantly, the any type of a clutch up would result in that front tire just going straight up, and I'd be in my 11 or 12 o'clock position for wheeling, and all was good. But on this FS570, whenever I clutched up, there was always this kind of delay, and it always bothered me a little bit. I thought maybe there was a chain issue, something, I don't know. Wasn't quite sure what the problem might be, but because she's so powerful with all the other mods, it wasn't really noticeable until the last few hundred miles, actually the last like probably 50 miles. All of a sudden, she just started to slip at a high speed. So I would be going, say, 65, and I wanted to pass a car. I'd nail the throttle, and the motor would rev up, but I wasn't jumping like I should be. So after I made this edit, I went out and immediately discovered that it was like night and day. I mean, she snaps up now at 2K. You could be in 2,000 RPM, like idle speed, and you can snap her up in second gear. You can snap her up in third gear if you're at barely over 2,000 RPMs. I mean, it's just ridiculous how much this little washer had an impact. So why am I even changing anything? Well, this is a crush washer, and it's copper, and I'm not particularly happy about keeping that in there because I just don't know what might happen. I mean, clutches can get hot, and that's copper. I don't know if it's going to have some kind of a reaction with all the oil and whatnot going on in there. I was much more comfortable with steel. So these fabricated washers that I got, I say fabricated because they weren't an exact fit. I had to drill them out a little bit, file them down to where they fit over the spacer. Before I forget, the torque setting, because everyone always struggles with that, is actually the same. So the clutch cover is 7.4 foot-pounds in my FS570 2011 manual, and these bolts are the same. So do not overpower them when you screw them back in, because those little stems, they are pretty tiny, and if you over torque them, you get a snap in there. That's a problem. These, if we mic these two here, we will see that we got about 1.8, 1.9 on the two of them. What do we got here? 1.9 it says. If we mic the steel one, .9. So I think I got lucky. Steel washer is about the same size. It was working perfectly. So I'm going to fit the 3 springs with the steel washer and be done with it. I guess if I need to, I can edit further by looking for different size washers, meaning I can probably get a thinner one if need be, but from what I could test after about 10 to 15 miles of riding, that width, this bigger one, was spot on for how I ride. Now, something I want to point out before I end this video is that I'm not sure what model I have. Well, let me take that back. I know I have the ADIGE, but what's confusing is that in the video, when they take the assembly apart, there is the Belleville, I don't know if you call it the anti-juddering plate, which is the first or the top one. But there's, before that one, there's like a little, or a giant washer that's very, very flat. And I don't have that. They showed in the video. The Belleville is supposed to fit next with the angle up so that it's pointing outwards. And then the first friction plate is notably different from all the other friction plates. Well, where it gets wacky, even though I'm missing that first part, which isn't too much, I don't think, what's wacky is that this particular clutch, all the steel plates are 1.5 millimeters. I mic'd each one. In the video, they talk about using a 1.5 steel plate first, and then as you add friction plates and then the next steel plate, you're supposed to start using these steel plates that are mic'd out at 2 millimeters. Well, I don't have any 2 millimeter steel plates. What I also noted compared to the video is that I have more plates in mine, and when I added up all the plates and compared to adding up all the measurement or the measured ones that they show in their video, the stack is probably about the same. So it looks to be someplace around 12 or 12.5 millimeter tall. So I think I'm good. I don't know if this was an earlier version. I don't know if the previous did something different. I don't know if he bought replacement plates or just threw plates in there, and steel plates that he had, because it was worked on by a shop, and shops are notorious for, you know, using extras, whatever. At the end of the day, the stack must be close enough to where it was working before, and maybe that explains or lends some credence to why they put this thing on this side, because maybe it was stacked a little too high and they wanted to take away from, I don't know. At the end of the day, what matters is that with this edit, I'm able to get her to grab like she's supposed to and still slip when she's supposed to. So there you have it. I'm going to get the steel washers on behind these two spring bolts and put her back together and hope that the rain ends so I can go out there and enjoy my baby. So thanks for watching. I'm going to post the links to those videos below, and anyone who's got an ADLER who can share any information about the shims and their experience with setting them, I'd be happy to have those comments post, because I'm just not finding much online. There's a lot of little tidbits here and there. So happy 2022 to all you burgers, and I'll see you out there on one wheel.